There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Urban Indian Health Institute's pre-application webinar for our Decolonizing Data grant. Next slide. So here's a quick look at our agenda for today's webinar. We'll start with some introductions, provide an overview of the grant opportunity, discuss some of the application logistics, key dates, and technical assistance. We'll also have some time at the end for questions, but if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to enter them into the chat. Since we're a small group today, we also just went ahead and gave you the ability to unmute yourself and chime in. So if at any point you have a comment or a question, feel free to just go ahead and chime in whenever you need to. We'll make sure to answer all of the questions either at the end of the webinar or as we're going through each of the items here. Next slide. So with that, I just want to welcome you all again. Here at the Urban Indian Health Institute, we like to begin everything that we do, whether it's meetings, presentations, etc., in a good way so that we can center ourselves in the space that we're in and set our intentions to best serve our relatives. Next slide. So with that, I'll just start by introducing myself along with the rest of our team. So my name is Jessica McGee. I'm a member of the Blackfeet tribe, so I'm originally from Montana. I am currently a project associate too here at Urban Indian Health Institute, where I'm helping oversee our Decolonizing Data project. And I'll pass it off to my team member, Kojo, who will introduce himself as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kojo Osei. I'm an epidemiologist 1 with the Urban Indian Health Institute. And in addition to working with Jessica on the Decolonizing Data project, I also work with our HIV and STI team, where we're helping to do surveys, key informant interviews, and data analysis regarding STIs and HIV in American Indian Alaska Native populations nationwide.
Thanks, Kojo. Next slide. All right, and so with that, I'll be providing kind of an overview of our project and the funding opportunity. So the purpose of this program is to really engage not only with Indigenous communities, both rural and urban, but also with state and county health departments to sort of build understanding and capacity to decolonize data using culturally based methodologies and kind of offer that opportunity for the cultural restoration of data and data stewardship and build forward those partnerships that allow us to embed the Decolonizing Data core principles into practice. So through this initiative, we really hope to kind of set the groundwork for broad adoption of definitions and practices that achieve the goal of data for Indigenous people by Indigenous people and present tangible applications for both non-Indigenous communities and government agencies. And this information is also available on our webpage with sort of a rundown of all the details of this opportunity. And we'll put links in the chat too, so everyone can reference back to those. Next slide. One more. Okay, so this funding opportunity will support the core tenets of decolonizing data, which have been defined by us here at UIHI. So the core tenets are the foundation from which we build our decolonizing data practices and priority areas. This includes things like our legal right to data governance, restoration of cultural and spiritual practices, and accountability to the next generations. We also recognize that this list is not complete, and we definitely welcome other Indigenous thoughts, practices, and knowledge as it grows. So this is kind of what we have as our list, but yeah, definitely not exhaustive. Next slide. With that being said, we really encourage you to apply for this opportunity if your work involves one or more of the priority areas that are detailed here. They're also available on our website and within the application materials themselves. It's a pretty long list, and your project can also kind of touch on multiple priority areas. So we have it up on the screen. It's also available on the web page, and I'll drop those links in the chat really quickly. But so some examples of project ideas that would incorporate these priority areas could include putting together a brief on data sovereignty, completing a needs assessment of your community, and planning for the data to be shared in a way that is culturally responsible, and kind of embedding those decolonizing data principles. Could also include working to establish partnerships with county or local health departments to ensure that the way their data is collected is correct and used correctly. Also, traditional storytellers, asking them to share stories about how information and data was gathered. Really, there's not really a limit on what you can do with this, as long as it kind of touches on one or more of these priority areas. Next slide.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica. So now we just want to go over just a few logistics regarding the whole application process. And with a lot of this information, like Jessica shared, and I'm going to share now, a lot of this will be available on the links to our Decolonizing Data Project RFA webpage. So you should be able to access all this information there as well too. But just to dive into those, so through the Decolonizing Data grant, organizations will have the opportunity, if they're awarded the grant, to receive funding up to $50,000 for their projects and their programs. And with this funding, there are no funding restrictions that apply for this grant. So awardees will be able to use these funds for a variety of reasonable project purposes as it relates to their projects or programs. So this can be, recipients using funds for personnel. It could be them using funds for travel related to their projects or different activities that they need to complete. It could be using that funding for different supplies for the activities or programs that they're doing, or to fund services that they're maybe giving out to their community or to different stakeholders that they work with to kind of push through their project. So really, there aren't really quite as specific limitations on how you can use the funding. So it's pretty broad for the projects, which should be helpful as well. Now I want to talk about a little bit who is eligible to apply for the funding for the Decolonizing Data grant program. And so to be eligible for this funding for the Decolonizing Data grant, the organization must be one of the following categories. Either you must be a nonprofit, urban or rural Native organization whose mission, leadership, and board are representative of Native communities, or your organization could be like a tribal nation or a tribal organization, or a local government if there's a demonstrated equitable partnership with local tribal communities. This can be urban or rural tribal communities, but sometimes there's questions about this and eligibility. If you do, feel like you maybe fit one of these categories, your organization fits one of these, but you're not entirely sure if you're actually eligible, like for example, maybe in the local government section of this, feel free to reach out to us, with questions. We can, review your project or organization, or we can have a discussion about this to really determine if you fit the bill and are eligible to apply for this funding. So we're definitely here as a resource to answer those questions too. Okay, so there are a few different components of the application that you would need to submit as part of the Decolonizing Data grant application that we want to go over. So this includes a completed application form along with a work plan and a budget worksheet and justification. And we've placed a link, I believe Jessica placed a link in the chat for these forms. And you'll see that as we reference on the screen there, the Decolonizing Data grant application, and as it's presented as well on our webpage, it includes all of these three pieces in one link. So there's a Microsoft form where you'll be able to, just in one place, complete the application form, the work plan, and the budget worksheet and justification, and submit it electronically through that platform. And we've also included a link in the chat and on the webpage to a PDF format of the application. We included this because how the application is set up, it's in sections, and so you may not be able to see further sections until you actually complete the first section and then the second section. So this PDF, looking at that, will allow you to see all the questions that will be asked from start to finish, so you can kind of prepare and maybe have the information you need before you actually start the real application. And so, yeah, just to recap, so this includes the completed application form, and this just goes over, details about your organization, as well as details about your project or program that you're proposing to do. The work plan kind of details activities, outputs, evaluation, and timelines regarding your project. And then the budget worksheet and justification essentially is giving you an opportunity to provide an itemized budget for different pieces, different items that go into your project activities. And you can include justification for each of those items. So for example, if you're talking about supply category for supplies for your project, you could write in itemized cost equals maybe $6,000. And then for your justification, you could give some specifics like listing cultural materials, workshop supplies, outreach materials, bags for items, etc., just to give some details. So that's what that one will look like. And again, if you need any support in the future too, or have any questions about any of these pieces, you can feel free to reach out to us and we can provide assistance.
Thanks, Kojo. So the next thing we'll cover is critical dates and technical systems. Next slide, please. So the most important date to note is the application due date, which is Monday, August 1st by 11:59 Pacific time. So looks like we have about 2 to 3 weeks left until the application deadline. And again, we will announce our grantees within the following week by August 8th. And again, any technical assistance requests concerning this grant can be directed to myself, Jessica McGee. My email is provided on the screen. I also dropped it in the chat if you would like to copy and paste it. But yeah, like we mentioned, if you have any questions specific to whether or not your project aligns with those priority areas, or if your organization is eligible to apply, please just reach out to us. We would love to just have a discussion and figure out what's best and make sure that you're able to apply. Next slide, please.
Okay. And so now just to summarize the timeline for the project award, you can see here on the screen, we have a few different key dates in addition to what Jessica mentioned about the application due date. So again, as you probably all know, our RFA and application materials, we released them back on Friday, July 1st, almost 2 weeks ago. We're having our pre-application webinar right now, July 12th, and the application for the Decolonizing Data grant is going to be due again Monday, August 1st of this year by 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. And then again, we'll make our determinations on the awards and do our award notification a week later on Monday, August 8th. And the funding period for the whole grant will be August 8th through December 31st of the year.
Okay, so with that, we're kind of at our question period. I do see we have one question in the chat about how many awards we will be giving out. So we don't have a set number currently. What we do have is kind of a set amount that we're looking to award. So really it's kind of dependent on how many people apply and what amount of funding they're looking for, which will kind of determine how many total awards we get out. So I know that's quite not a specific answer, but we really hope to give out as many awards as possible and support the work that our communities are doing. But yeah, that's kind of the rundown on all of the specifics. Again, feel free to let us know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns at all. We'd be happy to answer them and provide any additional information if needed. Approximately, if I had to guess, I would say between, anywhere from like 2 to 6, probably more in that 4-ish range. But again, super dependent on how many applications we get and what kind of funding amounts people are looking for. So the end of the funding period is December 31st of 2022. So this year. So we recognize that it's a shorter period. It's only will be a couple of months once the grants are awarded. I will just give everyone a heads up that we've had some early discussions with our funder about doing a no-cost extension at the end of the year if people are looking for extra time to complete their project. We understand that we're still kind of operating in the midst of a pandemic, and capacity and all of that has kind of been a little crazy over the last 2 years. So we do want to do everything we can to make sure that our awardees are able to finish their project without having to worry about deadlines and things like that. So we'll just be in constant communication and work with you and make sure that we are giving everyone the time that they need to get things completed. Yeah, so I think depending on kind of what your project looks like and what work you've already done, we recognize that a lot of you have already been working on things like this, and you might be seeking out additional funding or funding to support kind of the work that's already ongoing. So that's definitely something that we want to support and encourage. So again, depending on the specifics of your project and kind of what your plan is and what's already been completed, we'd love to just continue to work with you on that. We have had grantees incorporate past work into their future work and kind of include that in their timeline or their work plan. That's definitely okay. Again, it just depends on kind of the layout, and if you want to have a more in-depth discussion about that, what that can look like, feel free to just reach out to us again. Okay, so you have a question about, and I'm assuming it's kind of like an international organization. That is a very good question. I think I would have to double check with our leadership team. I'm not quite sure if we would be able to do that, but if we are, if that would be possible, I think that is something we would love to do. Again, thinking about decolonizing data for people, Indigenous people all across the world, not just from the US, and working in those spaces is super important to us as well. So I think I will have to get back to you on that one. And if you wanted to provide your email address, I can reach out to you directly, or you can send me an email, whichever works, but I can definitely get an answer on that for you. Awesome. I will take your email down and reach out once I have more information about what that can look like. Do we have any other questions today?
It looks like we have one question just through the chat. I don't know if everyone can see it here, but it's a specific question with an issue with the grant form, answering one of the questions, item number 13. If any of you have issues with the form completing the application, maybe please feel free to email us and we can check to try and troubleshoot those issues and fix that with the form. I'm not quite sure about this specific issue with item number 13, but definitely after the webinar, we can look into this to make sure that it's fixed so that you can complete the application fully.
Thanks, Kojo. Yes, this webinar is recorded. So once we finish here today, we'll have it up on our webpage where you can find the application materials and the other information. We'll have that available, this recording available there, probably by the end of the week. All right, if there are no other questions today, I think that's going to be everything for our webinar. But again, if there are any questions or comments, or if you want to kind of talk through more specifics about who's eligible to apply and whether your project fits within the priority areas, that kind of thing, feel free to just reach out to us. We can always hop on a Zoom call or a phone call and make sure you get the answers that you need to be able to apply, or any other information that would be helpful for you all. Again, thank you so much for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.